Bhagavat bhakti,
Bhagavat bhakti,
devotional service of the Lord,
devotional service of the Lord,
Yogata,
Yogata,
by contact of,
by contact of,
Bhagavat,
Bhagavat,
regarding the personality of Godhead,
regarding the personality of Godhead,
Tattva,
Tattva,
knowledge,
knowledge,
Vijnanam,
Vijnanam,
scientific,
scientific,
Mukta,
Mukta,
liberated,
liberated,
Sangasya,
Sangasya,
of the association,
of the association,
Jayate,
Jayate,
becomes effective.
becomes effective.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.3, it is said that out of many thousands of ordinary men, one fortunate man endeavors for perfection in life. Mostly men are conducted by the modes of passion and ignorance. Unless they are engaged always in lust, desire, hankerings, ignorance, and sleep. Out of many such man-like animals, there is actually a man who knows the responsibility of human life, and thus tries to make life perfect by following the prescribed duties. And out of many thousands of such persons who have thus attained success in human life, one may know scientifically about the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. In the same Bhagavad Gita 1855, it is also said that scientific knowledge of Sri Krishna is understood only by the process of devotional service, bhakti. The very same thing is confirmed herein in the above words. No ordinary man, or even one who has attained success in human life, can know scientifically or perfectly the personality of Godhead. Perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spirit. And as soon as his material hankerings cease, and he becomes enlivened as a spiritual being, and as soon as one understands that he has nothing to do with matter, he at once ceases his material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. This attainment of success is possible when one is above the modes of passion and ignorance, or in other words, when one is actually a Brahmana by qualification. A Brahmana is the symbol of Sattva Guna, or the mode of goodness, and others who are not in the mode of goodness are either Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, or less than the Shudras. The Brahminical stage is the highest stage of human life because of its good qualities. So one cannot be a devotee unless one at least qualifies as a Brahmana. The devotee is already a Brahmana by action. But that is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a Brahmana has to become a Vaishnava in fact, to be actually in the transcendental stage. A pure Vaishnava is the liberated soul, and is transcendental even to the position of a Brahmana. In the material stage, even a Brahmana is also considered a conditioned soul, because although in the Brahminical stage the conception of Brahman or transcendence is realized, scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is lacking. One has to surpass the Brahminical stage and reach the Vasudeva stage to understand the personality of Godhead Krishna. Science of the personality of Godhead is the subject matter for study by the postgraduate students in the spiritual line. Foolish men or men with the forefront of knowledge do not understand the Supreme Lord, and they interpret Krishna according to their respective whims. The fact is, however, that one cannot understand the science of the personality of Godhead unless one is freed from the contamination of the material modes, even up to the stage of a Brahmana. When a qualified Brahmana actually becomes a Vaishnava in the enlivened state of liberation, he can know what is actually the personality of Godhead. The verse again reads, Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta samdasya jayate. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. So in the previous verse, text 19, the process of coming to this stage of unalloyed goodness has been described. Tara rajas tamo bhava, kama lobdhayaschaye. This means that the influence of rajas and tamas, passion, ignorance, and kama, lust, and lobha, greed, they must cease. Their grip upon the heart must be released. Only then does one come to the stage called stitham sattva prasidati, where one is situated, stitham, in the mode of goodness. But what is important here is prasidati. In the mode of goodness, he is satisfied. One can come to the mode of goodness by following the rules and regulations, external rules and regulations of varnashram dharma. That is also included within our process, bhakti yoga. That is the basis. The 4 legs of dharma: cleanliness, austerity, truthfulness, mercy. So by adhering to these principles, one comes to the mode of goodness. But the test, whether one has actually transcended even the subtle influence of the lower modes, is simply this: is one actually satisfied in the mode of goodness? So if one is still on the platform of matter, material platform, material mode of goodness, then he'll not be satisfied in that position. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati told a story called the Ancestral Well. And this is a story that illustrates what happens to a person who tries to remain situated in the Brahminical platform, but in the material mode of goodness. So this story is of a family of Brahmanas, traditional family, who had been in a village for many, many generations. And at their home there was a well. Now this well had been bequeathed from generation to the next generation, to the next generation, for the purpose of fulfilling the Brahminical duties, the puja. Brahmins are supposed to engage in puja, and of course water plays a big part in puja. So normally the water will come from the Ganges or some other holy river. So in this family tradition of Brahmins, this well was considered sacred because it had been handed down by their patriarchs, their great ancestors. They had used this well for their puja. So, but in time, in passage of time, the well became spoiled. The water became polluted, as will happen in the course of time, to a small reservoir of water. But fanatically, the family continued to adhere to this tradition that we are Brahmins, we will only use water from this well, from nowhere else. So one by one, the family began to die off from typhoid fever and other diseases which afflicted them because they were only taking water from this one well. Until there was only one member of the family left. And he was insisting, he was himself already sick and quivering from fever. But he was insisting, I will only take water from this well. The state authorities came and they had an order from the government that this well must be sealed. It is dangerous. And this poor old Brahmin, shaking, white with fever, he was railing at the state authorities, "Get away, go away, don't touch our well, this is sacred. I will chain myself to this well, I'll not let you plug it up." So he had to be bodily dragged away. So this story is to illustrate the Smarta Brahman, the fallacy of the Smarta Brahman tradition, in which a person thinks he is a Brahman, he is in the mode of goodness by virtue of his birth, his family tradition. But family tradition, this seminal succession, it is material. Now it may be an exalted family, that is to be respected, that's all right. But Srila Prabhupada explained that birth in a Brahmin family is awarded one to give him a chance in spiritual life. Birth in a Brahmin family is not equivalent to spiritual life. So if one does not take the opportunity, what is that process? Bhagavat Bhakti Yogata, as explained here. Bhagavat Bhakti Yoga, devotional service to Bhagavan. And one simply sticks to the stereotyped material tradition, material platform, and thinking oneself to be very advanced, then he will become eventually polluted, contaminated, and dragged out of his position, as if by force. So, the position beyond the influence of the modes of nature is the position of pure devotional service. Pure devotional service is that position, as explained by Srila Rupa Goswami, that position which is beyond the influence of two witches, bhakti, mukti, bhakti and mukti. Bhakti mukti spriya. There's a verse in the Nectar of Devotion, which states that pisachi hridaya vasate, that there are two witches which clutch at the heart of one who is not genuinely transcendentally situated, not purely established in devotional service, but is clinging to something material, in spite of his being respected perhaps for being an exalted Brahman. These two witches are bhakti and mukti. Bhakti means desires for sense gratification. Mukti means desires for liberation. So one whose heart is clutched at by these witches can never attain this prasana manasa, satisfied mind, or stitva sattva prasiditi. He can never be satisfied in the mode of goodness. This is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita, the famous verse in the 18th chapter. Brahma bhutta prasana. So when one is the same, almost the same word, prasanatma, prasana manaso. When one is transcendentally situated and is satisfied, then na sochiti na kankshati. He does not want, he's not desiring to add something or subtract something. This is the meanings of these words. Sochati, kankshati. Hankering and lamentation. Hankering means I'm not satisfied with what I have. I want more. I want something else. This is equivalent to bhakti. Bhakti, desire for sense gratification or material acquisition. So one is looking in this way to readjust his situation because he's not happy. And on the other side, the same thing actually. One is dissatisfied and wants to subtract something or give something up. He's lamenting. Oh, because of this or because of that I'm suffering. So let me throw it away. Let me give it up. So this addition, subtraction business means one is not Brahmabhutta Prasanatma. One is not situated in the transcendental platform. Now, sochati na kankshati, these hankering lamentation must be absent. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu. does not view other living entities as objects of sense gratification in this calculating way, because he has needs, addition, subtraction. He has these needs, these imaginary needs to accept something or give something else up. So he views other living entities with a view to satisfying these needs. So therefore he cannot be samak sarveshu bhuteshu. He cannot be equal to all living entities, because he is seeing some as friends or others as enemies or whatever, objects of sense gratification. So this must be there in order to be transcendentally situated, satisfied. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu. Seeing all living entities equally, that means to see them as spirit soul, as parts and parcels of Krishna. Then in this satisfied condition, one can engage peacefully in devotional service. Mad bhaktim labhate param. So this platform of satisfaction is Brahma Bhuta. And the platform of non-satisfaction is called Upadi Bhuta. Upadi means designation. This mind where these desires and these hankerings and lamentations are created. This is a designation of the soul. Similarly, the gross physical body in which one tries to act out these desires, these dualistic desires, that is a designation. Upadi Bhuta. Bhuta means living entity. Interestingly enough, Bhuta also means ghost. So again, Rupa Goswami compares these dualistic desires, bhukti mukti, to witches, pisachi. Pisachi is also kind of a ghost. So they haunt the living entity. And because he's subject to their influence, he can never become steady in the real business of life, which is Krishna consciousness. There is a godbrother of Srila Prabhupada, Dolo Govinda Shastri, who came under the shelter of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj when he was a very young boy. So he was given the service of being personal servant to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati in the 1920s and 30s. As a young brahmachari, is often engaged in that way, to render personal service to the Guru. So, Dolo Govinda Shastri, as a young boy, he would travel with Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and he has many stories. One has to sometimes keep in mind, hearing these stories, that he was a young boy, and a Bengali also. But still, there are things to be learned from the stories he tells, from his impressionable point of view as a young boy. So he remembers once when a house was donated to the Gaudiya Math, and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati went there with a party to install that house as a chapter of the Gaudiya Math, to establish preaching there. So this house had a reputation of being haunted. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati made his camp on the upper floor of the house. It was a two-story house, so on the upper story Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was staying. And Dolo Govinda Shastri was engaged in personal service. So this evening that they were staying there, his service was to read aloud the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam while his spiritual master was doing some work at the desk. So, as he was reading, he was looking up from time to time to see his spiritual master. Now behind his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, there was an open window. And lo and behold, one time when he looked up, he saw a bone hand, this skeleton hand, coming in through the window, as if to seize Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati from behind. It was coming in like this. Now, as I said, keep in mind that he was a young boy. Very impressionable. He heard that the house was haunted. So, anyway, but this is the story he tells, and there's still a lesson to be learned. So when he saw this hand, he was so frightened, he fainted. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati revived him, brought him back to consciousness. And the boy was, he was in a state of shock, and he was trying to explain to his Guru Maharaj what he had seen. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was not at all concerned with whatever he had seen. But he said to the young man that, look, if you become frightened, if you see some horrible vision, whatever it may be, you should not faint. You should chant Hare Krishna. So, Dolo Govinda Shastri, he tried again to go back to his reading. Now he was very, very nervous. And he was reading and looking up. And then, after a few moments, again he saw the same bony hand. This time he chanted Hare Krishna, but then he fainted. And again, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati awoke him. And again he was trying to explain, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was saying, don't tell me these things. If you see something frightening, you should chant Hare Krishna, but the point of chanting Hare Krishna is to dispel this fear and give you strength so that you will go on, you will remain steady in your service, and your service is to read this Bhagavatam. So do that. So being ordered in this way by his spiritual master, he continued to read. And this time, again he saw the hand. He chanted Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. And then he went back reading aloud, in a loud voice, quivering voice. He continued to read the Bhagavatam. Because he was very frightened, but he remained situated in his service. And he saw Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He had noticed this. And so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati turned, this time looked at the window and saw the bony hand coming in. And he said, Hari Bol. Disappeared. And was never seen again. So this is a nice illustration of remaining steady in one's duty, getting free of the disturbance of ghostly influence. So in the same way, all of us are subject to this bewitching ghostly influence of bhakti and mukti if we are not steadily situated on the Brahman platform, or Brahma Bhuta platform. So the question always is, how do we become situated? Because we're trying, struggling in our duties in Krishna consciousness, and yet we find ourselves again and again in the heart being afflicted by some desire to add something to our life or to get rid of something. You see? As soon as one is influenced by these tendencies, it means he's not proceeded, he's not satisfied. Because this mode of goodness, this is simple life, simple, straightforward life of devotion to Krishna. So one should be satisfied with that, with his service, and not calculating to add or subtract something from his life. And yet we find that these afflictions, they beset the heart from time to time. So the eternal question is, how do we become steady? So in Padyavali, there's a nice verse. It's a rather long verse. I don't know if I can remember the whole thing. But anyway, it begins, Kasayo Ana Cha Bojanadi Nyamya Nova Vase Vasato Vane Vasato, and so on. This verse is saying that steadiness is not to be had by dressing up in saffron, you see, and declaring oneself to be a brahmachari. In this way I will become steady. This is not the way. Steadiness is not to be attained by eating a very strict diet of certain foodstuffs, so designed as to not agitate the mind. The statement is Bhojanadi Niyamya. Niyamya also means according to very strict regulation, eating very little in the day perhaps. Also, this steadiness, this freedom from material influence is not to be attained by giving, there's a kind of opposition, either giving powerful, dynamic, inspiring lectures, or on the other side, remaining completely silent. This Mauna Vrata. Neither way, you could say these are like opposites. But this also is not the way to attaining steadiness. Nor can steadiness be attained by visiting many different holy places, living in tirthas. What is the secret to steadiness? Govindasya padaravinda bhajane arambasya lashadapi. This means that one has to be fixed at the lotus feet of Govinda in all circumstances, whatever one is doing. It is not a question of what you're doing. Of course, what we're doing should be within the defined realm of Krishna conscious activities, that's for sure. We cannot take this point too far, like the Sahajas do. It doesn't matter what you're doing, smoking weed, not like that. One must be within the purview of sadhana bhakti. But it is not that this or that, performing this or that activity in sadhana bhakti, simply externally, it will provide us a means to attain steadiness. The steadiness is achieved by being fixed at the lotus feet of Sri Govinda in any and all circumstances. Just like to be steady, but this is the subject, to be steady. So to be steady means that the feet have to be firmly situated on the ground. So similarly, to be steady in Krishna consciousness, in devotional service, means that one has to be fixed at the lotus feet of Krishna. The Lord's lotus feet are the foundation of everything in spiritual life. For instance, here we are in this class, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam class. We're reading a verse from Canto 1, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, this important chapter, Divinity and Divine Service. This chapter is, practically every verse in this chapter is a key verse to understand the entirety of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. If one wants to have a good overview of our philosophy, then it is advisable simply to learn the verses of this chapter. Now this first canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the lotus feet of Krishna. So one should master the first canto. One should become fully conversant with the philosophy presented in Canto 1. In this way, one becomes fixed at the lotus feet of Govinda, and then one is steady and can make further progress. So many examples we can give how this being fixed at the lotus feet of Govinda means the fundamentals of devotional service. One must be fixed in these fundamentals. For instance, when we come into the temple, what is the first thing we do? We offer obeisances. This means we're bowing down to the lotus feet of the Lord. This is a regulative principle. Also, when we greet the deity, after greeting the deity, we take charanamrita, the water which has washed the lotus feet of the Lord. This is to help us become steady. Deity worship, when we're actually, whatever we're doing, not just the worship of the deity done by the pujaris, but everyone here, every devotee, his service is actually padaseva. We're serving as menial servants, offering whatever we're doing, whether it be in the book production department, or in sankirtan, or in preaching, or whatever it may be, or simply cleaning the temple. That service is to be offered to the lotus feet of Govinda. There's a fundamental attitude that must be there, that I am Krishna's servant. I am doing this for Krishna. This consciousness must be there. And this means with a personal touch. Devotional service is not very successful if it's rendered mechanically, in some hackneyed, stereotyped way. There must be the personal touch. To give a very simple but very meaningful example, so here you see Sri Kṛṣṇa, he has his stick, this cowherd stick. So this is a very basic paraphernalia of the deity. Now, when deity worship began in ISKCON, the devotees didn't know about this stick that should be there. So Srila Prabhupada one day, he pointed this out, that the stick should always be there, supporting Krishna's hand that is playing the flute. Prabhupada pointed this out by saying that Krishna's hand is becoming tired. So please put the stick there. Now this is the meaning, personal touch. You see? This is devotional service with a flavor of love. This attitude that let me render service to Krishna to make him more comfortable, to please him, to satisfy him more. Now Krishna is self-satisfied. Atmarama. He doesn't need our service, but he's very merciful. That he makes himself available to us, that we can add to his already unlimited joy. So actually it is for our benefit. So we should think in this way. Let us somehow or other try to please Krishna more. And this is the personal touch. Not this stereotyped idea that, there's got to be a stick there. I mean, all the temples in India, they have a stick, so we also have to have a stick there. And I was speaking yesterday in the Bhagavatam class that Krishna consciousness is not a matter of simply scheduling. See, simply completing lists of things that must be done and adhering to a schedule. Of course, that must be there also. That is very, very important. Vaidhi-sada. But the whole point of this is to become fixed in devotion at Krishna's lotus feet. If one does not have this flavor of devotion to his service, then he cannot be satisfied in the Vaidhi-sada. It becomes a burden to him. He starts to think, why do I have to get up in the morning? Why do I have to do these things? He cannot see the reason anymore. And he loses taste. Now the karmis, as I was speaking yesterday on the same point, but the karmis, they have their schedule to follow. They have their lists that have to be fulfilled, lists of duties that must be done. And they're carrying out these duties in life. Also, because of some flavor, some taste. But it is a taste of sense gratification. Karmis work for money. Prabhupada used to say, for them money is the honey. That's the sweetness of life. And they get a good paycheck and they can then use this money in different ways for gratifying the senses. So they have their flavor in life. So that is important in order to remain steady in one's activities. So similarly in Krishna consciousness, there must be some taste that keeps us steadily engaged. But this cannot be a mundane taste. If it is mundane, there is some mundane cause, hetu, then one cannot maintain his position. in devotional activities, because there's no, in Krishna consciousness, there's no real opportunity for sense gratification. So one may be foolishly calculating, I'll do my duties in devotional service with a view to attaining some sense gratification, but actually there is no sense gratification. So that means one becomes dissatisfied. He simply makes himself unhappy. And then he wants to add or subtract something to his life. He falls down on the material platform. Becomes subject to Rajagun, Tamogun. So this ultimately means sex life. This is when we speak of material desire for sense gratification, this is the fundamental one. So sex is either gross or subtle. In any case, in this association of devotees, if this influence of sexual desire begins to grow in the heart, then instead of deriving what we are really meant to derive from the company of devotees, that is also, we're speaking of being situated at the lotus feet. So, sadhu sangha, Vaishnava sangha, the Vaishnavas are situated at the lotus feet of Krishna. And we are supposed to become steadily fixed at Krishna's lotus feet. So that means one must become steady in the association of devotees. And to do that, one must have appreciation for devotees. One must simply appreciate. This is the whole art for remaining Krishna conscious and advancing in Krishna consciousness, is to learn to appreciate the society of devotees. How Krishna is so kind that he has brought together this very wonderful, remarkable mixture of living entities. He's brought them to his lotus feet, and he's engaging them in different ways. And they may be, individually quite unique persons, perhaps even to the point of being peculiar. But still, Krishna gives them shelter. He keeps them at his lotus feet, and he blesses them with devotional service. So this is what must be appreciated. And that whatever our vision may be, our relative mundane vision of a devotee, we may see some characteristics in him that perhaps disturb us in some way. But over and above that, we should always remember that whatever my feelings are, he is rendering service to Krishna. He's obviously pleasing Krishna, because Krishna gives him shelter at his lotus feet. Krishna is blessing him. So then the conclusion is, obviously, that my own sense of perhaps dissatisfaction with this person is simply a symptom of my own contamination. I should actually serve this Prabhu because he has been blessed with service to Krishna. So let me serve him so that I can serve Krishna. This is the Vaishnava attitude. So, but when the heart becomes just like this story of the well became spoiled. So if the heart becomes spoiled by this bhakti mukti, or in other words, this subtle sex desire, subtle or gross sex desire, then we can no longer appreciate the devotees in that way. We come down to this calculating dualistic platform, and we start to estimate devotees in terms of our own sense gratification. Oh, here's someone who can help me. He can add to my life something, some sense gratification. So let me make alliance with him. And here's someone else who's opposed to my efforts to enjoy myself here. So he becomes my enemy. So in this way, the sadhu sangha, which is actually meant to help us fix ourselves in Krishna consciousness, this sadhu sangha it may become completely spoiled. If this political calculation spreads and spreads to the community of devotees, then everyone forgets Krishna together. You see, we're supposed to be here to everyone to remember Krishna together and serve Krishna together and become inspired together. Actually, it is required. There's no other way. Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita, Machita Makata Prana Bodhyantas Paraspara Kutyatas Chamam Nityam Tushyanti Charamati. This is one of the cornerstone verses of the whole Gita. Srila Baladev Vidyabhutsa has identified that in the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter there's Chatu Shloki, just like there are 4 essential verses in Bhagavatam, so in Bhagavad Gita also there are 4. In the 10th chapter, verse 8 through 11. So this verse is one of these 4. And this verse explains that devotees' lives are surrendered to Krishna. Their minds are absorbed in Krishna. And when they speak only about Krishna. And their joy in life, their satisfaction in life, which is directly pertaining to this prasana manasa. Tushyanti also means to be satisfied. Ramanti means to enjoy, to be happy. So their satisfaction and happiness is what? Kotayantas chamam nityam. Discussing about me between themselves. They're very, very excited to enlighten and enliven one another about Krishna. When they see each other, they rush together to talk about Krishna. And there's so much to talk about. This is another thing. When we're in material consciousness, we fall into this, we fall into Maya. What is Maya? Maya means the condition of not being able to perceive, to appreciate Krishna. The more one is in Maya, the more one thinks Krishna is very far away. Even if one is standing in front of the deity, one is not actually, if he's in Maya, he's not able to have reciprocation with the deity. He's not able to appreciate. If one has a little bit of rag, a little bit of attraction, a little bit of attachment to the deity, because he's actually situated on the spiritual platform, then in seeing the deity, that will give him the whole next day's topics to talk about with others. I remember in the early days of Krishna consciousness, when I joined, when I was a new devotee, that was an exercise that devotees used to practice. We used to practice this, talking after greeting the deity and hearing the class. And the rest of the day, we would remind each other. We would even ask, you remember what color of dress Krishna was wearing today? You see? And so you could tell immediately. Those who have a little attraction to Krishna, they could answer, oh, he's wearing a kind of pinkish light purple dress. And those who would go, oh, where is your mind, Prabhu? What were you thinking of when you saw the deity? So when one is in Maya, you can stand in front of the deity, but nothing will register in the head. It's called photographic memory, in which nothing develops. Sometimes it happens in the dark room. The photographer rushes in with his roll of film. Boy, some great pictures I got. It develops, and it's all blank. So this is the tragedy. When the heart becomes afflicted by these 2 witches of material desire, then even though we see the deity, nothing develops in the head or the heart, unfortunately. So then, because Krishna is not at the center of our life, then what becomes of the association? It becomes mundane. Everyone is trying to place himself at the center. And thus the community which is meant for serving Krishna becomes rife with politics and disturbances and so on and so forth. So there's a very essential message in this verse. This is what Krishna consciousness means. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogata. If one is a bhakti yogi, then he will be satisfied with serving Krishna. And Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana. When he's satisfied with serving Krishna, a verse from the Nectar of Devotion is expressed the whole essence of what is meant by Krishna consciousness. Advancement in Krishna consciousness. Krishna Bhakti Rasa, that there is a rasa, there is a sweet taste in serving Krishna. So one who is actually on the Brahmabhuta platform, he will taste this. If he's on the material platform, he cannot taste it. And Krishna Bhakti Rasa, what is the effect of it? Mati. Mati means intelligence. It enlivens the intelligence. Just like in the material world. Prabhupada explained something very interesting about technological development. Today we see, and surely those who work in the BBT, they're obliged to be very aware of the strides of technology and computer science and other allied sciences which have to do with printing. So there's always every few months there's always some revolutionary thing coming out, and all the printers are scrambling to change everything because, well, we've got to incorporate this new system, otherwise we'll fall behind. So it's this breakneck pace of progress. So it's really amazing to think that there are people out there, these researchers, these technicians who are able to churn so much out of their brains, just constantly working, thinking of new ways, of more efficient ways of doing these things. So Prabhupada was explaining about this, that this type of intelligence to produce ever new machines, it requires in society, this is a very interesting juxtaposition. Prabhupada said it requires that the women become unchaste. These two things work together. The degradation of morality in society, which causes women to become unchaste, available for illicit sex. And at the same time, this churning of the male intelligence to produce ever and ever new machines. The juxtaposition is you see it in a very primitive way in the animal species, that during the mating season, when all the females are available for sex, then the males are competing to outdo one another. Of course, their competition is just beating their heads together. But in human society, it becomes also beating the head, but to invent some new device, which makes this. Of course, it makes the inventor. That's his motivation. It makes him a specially honored person, so that is good for his sex life. But then the device is utilized in so many ways to also facilitate different people's sex life. So in this way, there are two things always going on in modern society. The degradation of morality and the expansion of technology. They're intimately related. So this is the prakrita rasa. Prakrita rasa means the rasa or taste for material enjoyment. And this is the effect on the mati, the intelligence. And therefore this whole technological culture is coming out, this expansion of Kali Yuga culture. Because this is the rasa, predominant rasa, sex life, illicit sex. So in Krishna consciousness, the rasa is supposed to be Krishna Bhakti rasa. And this enlivens the intelligence. Krishna Bhakti rasa bhavita mati. This enlivens the intelligence. But in what? In Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana. In realization of the truth of Bhagavan Shri Krishna. So personal realization is there in the heart, for instance, in the relationship with the deity. But also this includes, or this means also that realization of how to expand Krishna consciousness in society. Because Srila Prabhupada said Krishna consciousness does not mean keeping it in a box. It's not, when this Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam does not mean some private, in a box type realization. That one sneaks into a corner and opens it and looks inside. Make sure no one else is sneaking. This is not Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam. Of course, it's there that one has his own individual realization of Krishna. But that is to go hand in hand with expanding Krishna consciousness in society. This is Lord Chaitanya's word. Krishna Upadesh. If you know something about Krishna, if you actually have realization of Krishna, then you should be teaching. That is automatic. Again, referring to the other verse I quoted. Prana. Krishna says, that's automatic. My devotees' minds are fixed in me. I am the very shelter of their lives. So that's an individual, personal relationship with Krishna. But it spills over. Because of this individual, personal realization of Krishna, they can't keep it to themselves. They're forced to let it spill forth from their tongues. Their tongues are always wagging about Krishna. They can't keep it to themselves. This is the clear symptom that they have this Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana, realized knowledge of Krishna. Someone who's silent, solemn, like a stone. It means his heart is more or less empty, devoid of realization. So Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Mati. The intelligence becomes enlivened when there is this Krishna Bhakti Rasa, which develops when one is on this platform, Evam Vasana Manaso, which means one must be situated firmly on the spiritual platform, Brahmabhuta platform, which means, in turn, that one is satisfied with this simple life in the mode of goodness. So I will stop here. Are there any questions? Yes?
You spoke about Brahmabhuta and Mukti as very different, but how it is possible to achieve Mukti without realizing Brahman?
Oh, I see what you mean. Because this bhukti mukti compared to two witches. Yes, but this is a different conception. Mukti in this case, you see, it's opposed, it's or linked to bhukti mukti. They're brought together. So first of all, there's bhukti, desire for sense gratification. And sense gratification automatically makes one miserable. This yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha evate. Bhoga, sense gratification, is the yoni, the cause, the origin of dukkha, suffering. So bhukti naturally leads to suffering, and then one wants to end the suffering, and that's the sense of mukti. It's actually two sides of the same coin, material attachment. This is not really mukti. Huh? Yes, raga, dvesha. Yes. This is duality. Soshiti, kamshiti. Anchoring, lamentation. This is duality. So to come to the actual liberated platform means to be free of duality. The liberated platform means to be firmly established in Krishna's service. That's all. Liberation is a byproduct of that. One who makes liberation the goal can never be liberated. Because it means he's making it the goal because he's at the same time attached to sense gratification and is suffering for that. So one has to give up the whole business, the whole duality. One has to just drop that and become fixed at Krishna's lotus feet. This is the point of this nice verse I cited from the Padyavali. That you may wear saffron, you may be very careful in your eating, you may give lectures, you may, or be silent, or whatever you may do, go to holy places, whatever. But if one is still engaging in these activities in this dualistic mentality, trying to get free of something, and you'll never get free. One simply must Govindasya pararavinda bhajana arambasya vasharati. Just become fixed at the lotus feet of Govinda. And Krishna, he's known as Muktipat. Maybe you remember from Chaitanya Charitamrita the conversation between Lord Chaitanya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya about Muktipat. Sarvabhauma wanted to change it to Bhaktipat. Lord Chaitanya said, "Oh, Bhagavatam says Muktipat." He said, "I don't like the sound of this word mukti anymore." Because he'd always understood mukti in that other way, connection with mukti. But Sri Krishna explained, no, when one takes shelter of Lord Krishna's lotus feet, then automatically he attains real mukti. But that's not the goal of the Guru. He doesn't care for that. It is said, I believe Prabodhananda Saraswati has written a verse that when one becomes established in pure devotional service, then mukti comes, personified mukti, the goddess of liberation. She comes with folded hands, and she's standing very humbly. Is there any way I can serve you? And bhukti, sense gratification, she's rolling at the feet of the devotee. Take me, please, take me, take me. But the devotee is not interested. Since they're eager for service, he'll say, all right, you can serve Krishna. You come for service. Don't serve me. Serve Krishna. You'll engage them in Krishna's service. This is liberation. This is real liberation. When bhukti and bhukti are just engaged, also engaged in Krishna. Bhukti Devi Dasi.
How to get rid of this?
Yeah, that was the main subject of the lecture. Just to say it again, one must become fixed at the lotus feet of Govinda. And that means serving Krishna to please Krishna. Not serving Krishna to advance my social status. Not serving Krishna because I don't know what else to do with my life. Somehow or other I've entered this society, and if I don't serve Krishna, they'll kick me out of the temple. So I might as well go through the motions so that I can get prasadam, fill my belly, and have a place to sleep. A few years ago there was some talk, I remember some discussion among managers in ISKCON about the question of hands-on and hands-off management. You know, what is the better manager? He whose hands are on the management affairs, or his hands are off. And then someone, I remember in some discussion, someone made a very brilliant point. He said, actually the real question, the real management question in ISKCON is brain on or brain off. And that's a fact. Because if the brain is on Krishna, if the mind is fixed on Krishna, Prabhupada said management will be at your fingertips. It will follow you like a shadow. But when the brain is off, you know, the switch is off, at least the channel to Krishna is off, the channel to Maya is on, then immediately so many problems were plunged in so many entanglements forced upon us by the nature. So, yes, Prabhu?
In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining to Sanatana Goswami different avatars. And in one purport, Prabhupada says that there is a Bhagavat Avesh and Shakti Avesh. And he says that Bhagavat Avesh, these are like Kapila and Rishabha, are the forms of divine absorption. So what does it mean, the forms of divine absorption?
Bhagavata Vesh, Shakti Vesh. Bhagavata Vesh means that Bhagavan, Vishnu Tattva, appears in this world. This is a nice example. You said Kapila Dev. So he appears as a great sage. But he is the Supreme Lord himself. So he teaches as a sage. But the goal of that which he teaches is himself. Bhagavat Avesh. And Shakti Avesh means an empowered, living an empowered servant of Krishna, who is showing the way to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.